News from across the Federation, spanning the region and covering the globe. This is the KyssFM SKN News Now Evening Edition, your one true source for news. And now your presenter.
Good evening, I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Friday, the 10th of February, 2017. In the headlines this evening, nationally, the Honorable Marcella Liebert says she's still waiting to hear actual solutions to crime from imported crime consultant Dr. Niels Chaitin. Regionally, Dominica's Prime Minister says the country is bigger than those trying to tear it apart. And internationally, fistfights broke out in the South African Parliament during the President's State of the Nation address. We've got the details of these stories and more straight ahead. Crime is a matter that must be addressed holistically. This is the position of chairperson of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, Honorable Marcella Liebert, who this morning shared her feedback on yesterday's National Crime Symposium at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort. Making her point, Ms. Liebert highlighted an important factor necessary for crime reduction tactics to be successful: civilian confidence in law enforcement agencies.
I went on to make the point that, to me, and that's not something which I heard from what the presenter was saying, one of the main things in terms of addressing crime has to be that various communities and the people would have to have confidence in the police. Because even if you put in all the things that people are suggesting, even if you put them in place and the people have no confidence in the police and the security forces, nothing is going to happen. And so I made that point and then said that one of the reasons why people may not have confidence is because of the politicization of the police force. And I made reference to the fact that as soon as the government changed, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, at his very first meeting with the police, had a political meeting, and among other things, basically said, we get rid of them. And you had police officers clapping and shouting. It was not about fighting crime, but about politics. And so I was asking the question, how are we to have any confidence when it seems to me that it's just politicization of the police force?
Meanwhile, Dr. Niels Chaitin's presentation at Thursday's National Crime Symposium seems to have fallen short of its original purpose to examine the root causes of crime and violence in St. Kitts and Nevis. Appearing as keynote speaker at the symposium, Dr. Chaitin's presentation was full of anecdotes, most of which shared no relationship with root causes of crime and violence specific to the Federation.
They tell me that there's so much monkeys in St. Kitts and Nevis. Have you seen one ton of manners yet? I haven't seen one. I believe, Mr. Prime Minister, pardon me, sir, I got to quote the scripture. Psalm 130, and I tell young people in schools, Psalm 139:14 say, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Don't go and tell children they came from monkeys. But hold a second. We don't tell them they come from monkeys, but what do? We call them kids. That's a baby goat, four-legged creature. And kids, when they grow, they sometimes end in the curry. Oh yeah, you got that right. Kids can't sit down and do math. Have you ever seen a kid? I just came from St. Paul's and drive on the eastern side of the island right down. That's in Tabernacle, sir. And I saw kids scampering everywhere. You can't grab their attention. Poor mom is bleating for them to come, and they're not coming. They're kids. They're animals. You call our children kids? Don't you know that it could be a downward spiral? It could be self-fulfilling prophecy, educator. And when they can't sit down to look at you and talk to you, you wonder what's happened. And however, Americans in the urban cities, and we develop it. What's up, dog? What's up, dog? And we joke about it. When I took a shower this morning, I see no tail behind me.
In one other instance, Mr. Chaitan condemned exotic dancers and the clubs they're working in an attempt to make a correlation between their existence and the concept of respect for women.
I hope you don't have strip joints here. Somebody's laughing. They know one somewhere. Shut that down, man. Let's get respect for women. Women, your body is not a product for sale. Don't bother with North America and Europe. Your body is not something for sale. Your body is the body of a beautiful, God-made ebony princess. Come on here. Tell our girls that. Yeah, thank you, ladies. Thank you. You're looking at me as though you know what I'm saying here. We got to put value in our children. Because when they go outside, folks, they got everybody's child around them in a group. And they're going to be pressuring your child. You got to be resolved. Because the adventure and curiosity of youthfulness could make us do what we don't want to do.
Addressing Chaitan's contribution to the National Crime Symposium, Honorable Marcella Liebert expressed her disappointment with the lack of actual recommendations made by Chaitan. According to Ms. Liebert, the crime reduction specialist, international social skills consultant, and motivational speaker had provided no new recommendations in respect of curbing crime here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
The presenter, he dealt mainly with social and to some extent economic reasons for crime. A lot of them we have heard before, and so it was just like why people do crime, like a parenting and all the other social and economic reasons about poverty, etc. However, we thought that if you're going to deal with crime, you have to deal with it in a holistic way. There were no recommendations. He made no recommendations in his presentation. And in the general discussion, he was asked about that, and we learned that seemingly that was not part of his remit. And so they were looking to the group session, which would to come up with these recommendations to what was said.
That was Honorable Marcella Liebert. In other news, tourism officials in Nevis are attributing bad sea conditions to the decision made by the captain of the cruise ship Saga Pearl II to cancel its inaugural call to the island on Thursday. After an assessment of sea conditions, it was decided that it would not have been safe for the 450-passenger vessel to come into Charlestown from where it was anchored at sea. The Nevis Tourism Association's Devon Liebert offered the following explanation, as dozens of taxi drivers were visibly upset by the fact that they would be unable to ply their trade.
Because of high swells within the anchorage area of the ship that is out to sea, they were unable to actually remain there. Even though it was calm at the shore, outside there the swells were very high, which made it difficult for the tender to operate. And to complicate matters, the cruise line carried a number of elderly passengers, and to ensure the safety of the passengers, the captain saw it fit or felt it fit to cancel the call so as to maintain the safety of the passengers.
With the winter cruise season set to end in March this year, Mr. Liebert gave the reassurance that more than a dozen cruise ship calls to Charlestown are yet to be made.
The next one being on February 15, which is Sea Dream 2 with 110 passengers. We also have an additional call of the Azamara Quest. That is 686 passengers. We have Club Med coming up with 386 passengers. And we also have another cruise ship the Hamburg, MS Hamburg, that has 400 passengers, along with the regular Seadream and the other cruise lines that we have. We're seeing some unexpected calls, Mandalay, which we haven't received schedule from. We continue to welcome the Sagita on a weekly basis. This is a small line with just 24 passengers, but every passengers count for us. So all in all, we expect a good season.
Nevis is often at the mercy of the elements, as the absence of a port with the capability of adequately berthing ships means that conditions must be ideal for vessels to come into the Charlestown port. While at a meeting in China in 2015, the island's Minister of Tourism and Deputy Premier Mark Brandley unveiled a master plan for the development of Charlestown to include a new port facility capable of facilitating large cruise ships. There's been no further word on progress for plans for the Charlestown facelift. At the moment, Nevis relies on calls from smaller cruise vessels and on tours with passengers who arrive at Port Zante in St. Kitts. Still in Nevis, Deputy Premier Mark Brandley on Wednesday 8th stated that the Concerned Citizens Movement-led Nevis Island administration hopes to have phase 1 of the construction of the athletic stadium being constructed there completed by March 31st. The announcement was made during a tour by the cabinet of the Nevis Island administration to examine progress on the project.
We are very, very proud of this particular project. It's the single largest investment in our youth and in sports that we've ever seen in the history of our little island. And so for us, this is a very important project. I'm happy to hear that the targets that we have set, we understand they're optimistic. We are hopeful that we can achieve those targets.
Former Deputy Premier of Nevis, Hensley Daniel, does not share his successor's optimism, however, regarding progress at the stadium. Daniel has declared that no phase of an IAAF World Championship level athletic stadium can be complete by March of 2017.
I am a social development specialist, a public policy consultant. So I do consulting work in all areas of social development. That's one. Secondly, the development of an IAAF level track and field facility can never be conceived to finish in 3 months in any phases. And this is classic CCM. They don't plan, they don't organize, they don't monitor, they don't evaluate. And as such, all of their projects are marked by cost overrun, time overrun, and quality underrun.
Mr. Daniel, who also served as Minister of Sport on the Nevis Island administration, said the rushed construction of the athletic stadium is an election gimmick on the part of the CCM, one which the NRP will inevitably have to bring up to realistic standards upon their return to government.
Nobody needs to be fooled about this. This is an election year, and the typical approach, I came to politics in 2000, and it was all about spraying dirt and stone in Nevis. With no plan, no level of project management, no focus on quality and no focus on time. And as such, it is just a case of providing some work for some fellas who are complaining that there is no economic activity in the country, and so you start with the track. We know that when we go to government, we will have to fix the track properly.
That was Hensley Daniel. 3 scholarship programs have been made available to citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. The first scholarship offers the opportunity to pursue graduate studies in Turkey. Successful applicants will enjoy benefits which include a monthly stipend, full tuition, a free 1-year Turkish language course, accommodation, round-trip airfare, and health insurance. Persons applying for the master's program must not have been born earlier than January 1st, 1987. And persons applying for the doctorate program, January 1st, 1982. Additional information on this scholarship can be found at www.trscholarships.org or www.turkeybursluv.gov.tr. The application deadline is February 17th, 2017. Another scholarship being offered by the Organization of American States through the Department of Human Development, Education and Employment and the UNESCO IHE Institute for Water Education through the OAS Partnerships Program for Education and Training. Scholarships are being offered to qualified candidates of the Americas to participate in the Graduate Professional Diploma Program in Sanitation and Sanitary Engineering via distance learning. This program requires that candidates complete the admission application before applying for the scholarship. The deadline for the receipt of applications for this program is June 1st this year, while the deadline for scholarships is June 15th. Information about the UNESCO IHE's application process can be acquired by emailing onlinecourse@unesco-ihe.org. The Organization of American States through the Department of Human Development, Education and Employment in conjunction with the Syracuse University College of Law is also offering scholarships to participate in a Master of Laws program in Syracuse, New York. This particular program also requires that candidates begin the admission process before applying for the scholarship. The deadline for the receipt of application to the program for fall 2017 is May 15th and October 15th for spring 2017. The deadline for applying for these scholarships is May 31st for the fall 2017 semester and October 31st for spring 2018. Additional information can be acquired by visiting www.law.syr.edu for information about the admission process. Information can also be found on the OAS website at www.oas.org/scholarships. Still to come in regional developments tonight, Cayman Islands child rights advocates believe the country's system is bolstering pedophiles. We've got the details in just a moment. Following the Roseau riots on Tuesday in Dominica, the country's Prime Minister Roosevelt Scarrett has declared that the country is bigger than those trying to tear it apart. The latest on this development in this report.
Following a wave of violence in the capital city of Roseau on Tuesday, 7th February, Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Roosevelt Scarrett addressed the nation, concluding that Dominica is bigger and better than those who seek to tear it apart. Acts of vandalism, looting and arson took place following protest action orchestrated by the opposition United Workers' Party. While the police granted permission for a public meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Tuesday, 7th February 2017, the activity went past the end time under the instruction of the opposition leader, Lennox Linton. The Honorable Prime Minister explained in his address that when Linton addressed his supporters, the mood of the meeting changed.
When Lennox Linton took control of the microphone, it changed the course of events and resulted in Dominica making world headlines all day today, and not for a good reason. In his pronouncements during his address, Lennox Linton, the leader of the opposition in Dominica, and the man who fancies himself as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces in Dominica, made it clear that the Chief of Police had no legal authority to tell him when to end the meeting, and therefore the meeting would not end at 3 p.m. That's what Mr. Linton said. I expect that they will deny this. So I invite you now to hear Mr. Linton for yourself.
Stop now. We can go up to 11 o'clock tonight if we
Despite repeated requests from the police for the public meeting to end at the agreed time, 3 p.m., the opposition leader persisted that the meeting would end at the time the people pleased.
This is where the breakdown of respect for law and order began. This is where a clear signal was sent to the supporters of the combined United Workers' Party and Dominica Freedom Party that the law was not to be respected and that they could do as they please. This is when and where the cue was given for persons to do whatever they deemed necessary to forcibly and unlawfully remove a democratically elected government from office.
The nation's leaders said that the events of Tuesday night are currently under police investigations. The situation deteriorated even further when protesters and the leadership of the party refused to follow police orders to move a truck which served as the podium for the public meeting. He says the ultimate plan of the opposition was to essentially overthrow the Dominica Labour Party administration.
A new political party, the United Progressive Party, has been launched in Barbados. Led by a former member of the Barbados Labour Party, the announcement of the UPP has not, however, made any significant impact on the political arena, nor does it excite political observers.
The UPP, led by former Barbados Labour Party Senator Lynette Eastman, now brings to 5 the number of political parties that voters have to choose from when they cast their ballots in the general election constitutionally due next year. Eastman has yet to launch her full slate of candidates. However, Dr. David Estwick, who defeated Eastman in the last 3 polls, paid little attention to the latest political party. He told Barbados Today, quote, "If after 3 election defeats, 2003, 2008 and 2013, this is how she wants to spend her time, I wish her well in her endeavors," end quote. Now, political scientist Peter Wickham also weighed in on the latest developments, saying he did not believe the UPP will make much of a difference on the political landscape.
It doesn't excite me politically, and I don't think it's anything that would change any of the major outcomes in Barbados at this time. That's my basic position on it. Lynette Eastman is not a political heavyweight. She, to the best of my knowledge, never won an election. And my question is, how does she in that kind of context expect to anticipate making a serious impact on politics? And I think we have to wait to see whether she has other people waiting in the wings that may be able to come out and achieve something where she fails. So that would be my stance. I don't know that it's going to make any huge difference.
Okay.
I congratulate her for starting a new party, and it's always a difficult thing to do, and that's something that we ought to recognize.
Okay.
But, there's nothing that excites me politically in it. The other thing I have concerns about where she is concerned is that I get a sense that this new party is less about an alternative economic or political philosophy, more about the fact that she has difficulties with the current leadership of the Barbados Labour Party.
The UPP, the Barbados Integrity Movement, and Solutions Barbados are seeking to reshape the political landscape dominated by the ruling Democratic Labour Party and the opposition Barbados Labour Party.
Child sexual abuse advocates in the Cayman Islands are not pleased with the penalties in place for perpetrators. They are convinced that the present circumstances emboldens child predators and discourages victims from coming forward.
Community activist Sandra Hill says the penalties for those convicted of child sex abuse should be sending a clear message.
This behavior is, number one, unacceptable. Number two, if you're caught engaged in this behavior, you will see some severe penalties. And as it stands right now, unfortunately, that isn't the case.
She's advocating for the creation of a child welfare office to work with parents, social services, police, and the courts on such issues, as well as a dedicated court for sexually based offenses.
And that type of perpetrator is a very different perpetrator from anyone else. And I think the judges need to comprehend and understand what it is that they're working with, so they can dole out appropriate sentences and they're not so easily convinced to give someone a slap on the hand, especially for repeat offenders and stuff like that.
Now, it's important to note that each case has its own unique set of circumstances. Hard evidence, witness testimony, and other variables differ from case to case and ultimately inform a judge's decision.
Having faith in the system would really increase the amount of reports that we get, because there's so many that just don't get reported, that people just don't want to go through.
Coming up in the international segment of SKN News Now, an international arrest warrant has been issued for Peru's former president. We'll give you the details on this in a moment. Chaos erupted in South Africa's parliament as President Jacob Zuma prepared to deliver his keynote State of the Nation address. The unruly scenes underline deep political divisions in the country. Tanya Page reports from Cape Town.
Ministers, on a point of order.
President Jacob Zuma tried to start his speech several times.
Can you please recognize us?
Provincial legislature.
But he was repeatedly drowned out. When the opposition economic freedom fighters refused to leave, a brawl broke out. The EFF says Zuma has no right to speak after the country's highest court found he violated the constitution.
We are prepared to leave this parliament, being in a coffin, standing for the truth. We are not going to be intimidated by soldiers, by police, by criminals.
The official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, is considering legal action over the president's deployment of soldiers onto Cape Town streets to keep the peace. In the end, it was peace inside Parliament that proved impossible.
Let us stand up for the Constitution of the Republic. Let us stand up for the people of South Africa. We can't sit in a parliament that's just there to stand up for the ANC.
When Zuma finally started the speech, the message was a familiar one.
Today, we are starting a new chapter of radical socio-economic transformation. We are saying that we should move beyond words to practical programs.
Economic growth has slowed to 1% and unemployment is at a 13-year high. Increasing numbers of South Africans don't believe the ANC can deliver, especially with an embattled president who's facing mounting criticism from within his own party.
The opening of Parliament was chaotic and shambolic. Opposition parties would have people believe that's a true reflection of the real state of the nation. For the ANC, there's the risk the president's message has been drowned out, while many South Africans must be wondering what else the year will bring.
Observers are becoming increasingly concerned that though talk between the new United States president and the leaders of Iran could lead to conflict, the Donald Trump administration has issued sanctions on Iran and its officials and said Tehran was being put on notice. However, a senior advisor to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has issued a warning of his own. Patty Colhin reports.
The Trump administration has not minced words on Iran.
As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Some see that as the administration drawing a red line. If so, Iranian leaders are making clear they don't think it's a line the U.S. will actually cross.
They would not dare carry out military threats against Iran. The Americans know very well that Iran and its allies in the region would retaliate very hard and make America face dark days to come.
Advisor to the Supreme Leader, Ali Akbar Velati, told Al Jazeera in an exclusive interview that Iran will continue to develop its missile program, describing it as defensive. Advocate Trita Parsi, who works for better U.S.-Iranian relations, says that response should have been expected.
They immediately put on the toughest possible position because their belief is that the only thing that would deter an attack is if they come across as strong. If the United States believes that Iran is being intimidated, they believe that will invite further threats and potentially even action by the United States. Whether that's true or not, we can debate.
The U.S. president has surrounded himself with advisors who see Iran as a big threat, Steve Bannon, who has said the West is engaged in a clash of civilizations with Islam and its followers, and National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. He was criticized for his past intelligence work for trying to link Iran to most attacks. That's according to people who worked with him, like Joshua Manning.
To call them, the root of all evil, and to call them, the force behind every terrorist incident in the United States or across the world, which is probably what is being put into the president's ear right now, is not true, and it's going to cause a war.
Still, President Trump is leading the U.S. public wary of war, elected on a promise to keep the U.S. out of military conflicts overseas. At the same time, he promised to take a tougher stand on Iran. The open question, with potentially deadly consequences, can he do both?
A judge in Peru has issued an international arrest warrant for former President Alejandro Toledo, who is accused of taking $20 million in bribes. The case is part of a scandal surrounding allegations of widespread bribery in Brazil by the country's largest construction company, Odebrecht.
18 months of preventive custody. A Peruvian judge decided to impose the measure against the former president of Peru, Alejandro Toledo. He's accused of accepting $20 million in bribes from the Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht in exchange for infrastructure contracts.
Plazo de 18 meses contra el investigado Alejandro Toledo Manrique.
Preventive prison for a period of 18 months against the plaintiff Alejandro Toledo Manrique, and as he is currently free, he should be located, captured and imprisoned in a Peruvian penitentiary immediately through available corresponding resources. To that end, national and international orders are to be presented.
Toledo is believed to be in Paris. The judge issued an Interpol red alert for his arrest wherever he is. Brazil's biggest construction company is the focus of an ever-widening international corruption scandal.
Revelations of Odebrecht's scandal have now also reached Colombia, and as in Peru, they involve the highest level of power. The local National Election Council is investigating possible illegal contributions of up to $1 million to President Juan Manuel Santos' re-election campaign in 2014.
Government officials deny the allegations, saying they're based solely on the testimony of a former opposition lawmaker who is in jail for channeling the bribes on behalf of the Brazilian firm.
There is no evidence of any meetings or anything close to a contribution to President Santos's campaign from such a dark figure.
If proven, it would be a major blow for the Colombian president, who has an internationally recognized reputation for honesty and won the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize. But he's not the only politician under suspicion. A former deputy minister of transportation under President Álvaro Uribe has already been arrested. And the election campaign of Santos' main rival, Oscar Iván Zuluaga, is also under investigation. But the level of corruption seems to have been less pervasive here than elsewhere.
There's only 2 contracts under execution today, but the Fiscalia is investigating contracts that were awarded previously to Odebrecht. So yes, there might be additional corruption cases. They're being investigated, but these are contracts that have already been executed.
The chief prosecutor announced he will personally travel to Brazil in coming days in search of more information, promising to reveal the names of all the officials involved.
That wraps up our international developments this evening. Now for a recap of this evening's major headlines nationally. Honorable Marcella Liebert says she's still waiting to hear actual solutions to crime from imported crime consultant Dr. Niels Chaitan. Regionally, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit says the country is bigger than those trying to tear it apart. And internationally, fistfights broke out in the South African Parliament during the President's State of the Nation address. Still to come this evening, Sports Zone. Tonight in Sports Zone, Virat Kohli hits a fourth double century as India dominate Bangladesh in that Test series. We've got the details in just a moment. Virat Kohli became the first Test batsman to register double centuries in 4 successive series as India dominated Bangladesh in Hyderabad. Kohli struck a classy 204 as India made their third consecutive score of over 600 before declaring on 687 for 6. The Indian captain made 235 against England in December, as well as 211 against New Zealand in October and 200 against the West Indies in July. India, the world's top Test team, have not lost a home Test series since 2012. Murali Vijay scored 108 and Rediman Shaha an unbeaten 106 as India made their highest Test score against Bangladesh. Kohli, who captains India in all 3 formats, hit 24 boundaries on his way to a double century, taking his Test average to 50.10 runs. It's getting a little difficult to watch 14-time major winner Tiger Woods struggle with making a comeback to golf, and now with news emerging that he is withdrawn from next week's Genesis Open and the Honda Classic on 23rd February with ongoing back spasm, it makes his dream of a grand return even more unlikely. The American pulled out of this month's Dubai Desert Classic before the second round with injury. The former world number 1, who returned in December after 2 back operations, said his playing schedule will now be reassessed. The Masters, the first major of the year, takes place from April 6th through 9th. The 41-year-old is becoming an increasingly frail figure, and there's no word on his chances of being fit for April's Masters. Finally, tonight, World Anti-Doping Agency is the forefront of the fight against drugs in sport. But their job is not an easy one, as there's always a struggle for science and technology to remain one step ahead of cheaters.
The World Anti-Doping Agency is at the forefront of the fight against drugs in sport. It sets out the ground rules and procedures, tests athletes for doping, and regularly updates its list of prescribed substances. Specific drugs like anabolic steroids are banned at all times, while other substances are only prohibited during competition or for certain sports. For example, beta blockers are banned in archery and shooting because they help keep the heart rate low and hands steady. Blood doping is one of the most effective ways of illegally improving performance and endurance, and is particularly prolific in professional cycling. Certain techniques, taking the blood-boosting hormone EPO, synthetic oxygen carriers and blood transfusions can be used to boost levels of oxygen-carrying hemoglobin. Increasing red blood cell count means more oxygen reaches muscles, increasing stamina and performance. While EPO and synthetic oxygen carriers can be detected, some types of blood transfusion are harder to trace, for example when athletes infuse their own blood. Detection methods include measuring total hemoglobin mass or testing for plasticizers, which are byproducts of the container the blood was stored in. As doping becomes more sophisticated, the athlete biological passport is a key tool in trying to track down cheaters. Athletes are monitored throughout the season and certain markers are regularly measured. For example, heart rhythms, fat-to-weight ratios, blood and urine levels. Any irregular biological changes outside permissible limits will indicate the strong possibility that illegal substances are present in the athlete's system. But even this program isn't perfect. Small frequent use of EPO, testosterone or even insulin, known as microdosing, can circumvent biological passports.
And that wraps things up for us here at the SKN News Now Evening Edition News Desk. On behalf of the entire team and our technical people here, that portion of it is controlled by Mr. Kenny James and Leslie Joseph, who's out there on the outside taking care of our reporting on a daily basis. I'd like to wish you a very pleasant evening. I'm Ebony Brandon. Do make sure that you tune in tomorrow morning, 11:45, for the weekend edition of SKN News Now. And of course, remember on a Sunday at 1 p.m. and then again at 6 p.m., we have for you a presentation of the top stories of the week at a week at a glance. So we invite you to join us then. Do stay tuned as well. DJ Yardy comes up next. I'm Ebony Brandon. Good night.